My father stared across the dinner table wearing that same condescending smirk I'd seen my entire life, and announced loud enough for everyone in the restaurant to hear, "Only successful kids get rewards in this family." He glanced at my brother Alexei, his golden child, his pride and joy, his proof of good parenting, and ceremoniously handed him a brand new BMW key. The metal glinted under the chandelier as my brother grinned, that smug grin I'd grown to hate. Everyone at the table applauded. My mother beamed. My aunt nodded approvingly. My grandmother raised her glass in a toast. Then Dad turned to me. Empty hands. Disappointment clear in his eyes. That look that said I was the child who hadn't lived up to expectations. The one who'd chosen the wrong path. The one who was still trying to figure things out while my brother had already made it. Before I could speak, before I could even process the public humiliation happening in front of extended family and family friends, he added with barely concealed contempt, "Try achieving something first, Zara, then we'll talk about rewards." The table went awkwardly quiet for just a moment before conversation resumed as if nothing had happened. As if my father hadn't just publicly dismissed me in front of 20 people. As if my accomplishments, my struggles, my entire existence didn't matter because it didn't fit his narrow definition of success. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Not broke, hardened. Like coal compressed into diamond. Hi, my name is Zara Noel. I'm 26 years old, and for years my father treated me like a failed investment he regretted making. My brother Alexei was the pride of the family from the moment he was born. 3 years older than me. He'd followed Dad's exact blueprint for success. Business degree from a prestigious university, corporate job at a Fortune 500 company. Promotions that came regularly, if not impressively. Future CEO. Dad bragged constantly to anyone who would listen. He'd introduce Alexei at social gatherings by listing his job title and salary range. He displayed Alexei's college diploma in his office like a trophy. He talked about Alexei's career trajectory like it was his own personal achievement. Me, I was the aspiring creative director working in a tiny studio apartment that doubled as my workspace, barely getting by on freelance projects and part-time gigs. I'd studied graphic design and communications. I wanted to work in advertising, in brand strategy, in the creative world that made my heart sing. But Dad saw creative careers as hobbies, not real work. Artists starve, he'd say dismissively whenever I tried to share my projects. Creative types never make real money. He loved using me as a cautionary tale at family gatherings, a warning to younger cousins about what happens when you chase impractical dreams. Chasing dreams doesn't pay bills, Zara, he'd announced at last year's Thanksgiving dinner while I was sitting right there. Maybe you should lower your expectations. Get a real job. Something stable. Something with a future. Every achievement I made, landing a client, completing a successful campaign, getting positive feedback, he diminished with a wave of his hand, or a condescending, "That's nice, dear." Every step forward I took felt like he was there pushing me 2 steps back with his judgment. But the humiliation that night at the restaurant, watching my brother receive a car I could never afford while I received nothing but criticism, that was different. That was the spark that ignited everything that came next. I went completely silent after that dinner. Not defeated, focused. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't try to explain my career path or justify my choices. I just went quiet and got to work. While Dad funded Alexei's lifestyle with gifts and loans and connections, while my brother posted Instagram photos from business conferences Dad paid for and luxury apartments Dad helped lease, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. Late nights that turned into early mornings. Freelance projects I took on top of my regular work. Networking events where I forced myself to talk to people even though I was exhausted. Rejections became my training ground. Every not quite what we're looking for, or we went with someone more established, made me refine my portfolio, sharpen my pitch, improve my skills. I turned every "you'll never succeed" for my father into fuel. Into a quiet mantra that played in my head during the hardest moments. Watch me. Just watch me. I stopped going to family dinners where I'd be compared unfavorably to Alexei. I stopped answering Dad's calls where he'd ask if I'd gotten a real job yet. I stopped performing for an audience that would never appreciate the show. And then, 3 months after that humiliating restaurant dinner, I got the email. The one that would change everything. A major international brand, one of the biggest names in luxury goods, had seen my portfolio online. They tracked down my contact information. They wanted to interview me for the lead creative director role for their global rebranding campaign. My hand shook so hard reading that email that I had to set my phone down. This wasn't just any job. This was the kind of opportunity people spent decades working toward. And they found me. 3 interviews later, spanning 2 months of nerve-wracking waiting, they sent the offer. 6 figures, international travel, full creative control, my ideas, my vision, my name on campaigns that would be seen by millions. The contract arrived on a Tuesday morning. Thick pages of legal language, compensation details, and opportunities spelled out in black and white. I signed it sitting on my apartment floor, crying so hard I could barely see the signature line. This was real. This was happening. Everything my father said I'd never achieve was suddenly mine. But I said nothing to my family. Not yet. I wanted the perfect moment. The moment where the truth would be undeniable and the reversal would be complete. I waited 3 weeks, letting the paperwork finalize, letting the company make their internal announcements, letting everything become official and irreversible. During those 3 weeks, Dad called twice, both times asking if I'd reconsidered my career path. Both times with that tone of weary disappointment, like I was a chronic problem he'd tired of solving. I kept my answers short. I'm working on something. I'll let you know soon. He probably thought I was finally giving up on creative work. Finally seeing the light. Finally ready to get a real job, like he'd been pushing me toward for years. Let him think that. Let them all think that. The surprise would be so much sweeter. The perfect opportunity came when Dad announced he was hosting a Sunday gathering to celebrate Alexei's latest promotion. Something middle management, nothing groundbreaking, but Dad treated it like Alexei had just been elected president. Family celebration, the text invitation said. Let's honor success. I almost didn't go. Almost sent an excuse. But then I realized this was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The stage was set. The audience was gathered. All I had to do was show up and rewrite the narrative he'd been telling about me for years. Sunday came. I dressed carefully, professionally but not ostentatiously. I wanted to look successful without looking like I was trying too hard. I printed my contract and had it bound in a leather portfolio folder. I made one phone call to someone I'd been working with at the company, asking a favor that seemed crazy, but that they enthusiastically agreed to help with. Then I drove to Dad's house with my heart pounding, but my resolve steady. This was happening. No backing down now. No second guessing. Just truth delivered at the perfect moment. The house was already full when I arrived. Extended family, family friends, Alexei's colleagues, all gathered in the spacious living room with expensive catering and champagne flowing freely. Dad was holding court in the center, telling stories about Alexei's childhood that supposedly predicted his current success. My mother was showing people photos on her phone. Alexei stood in the middle of it all, basking in the attention with practiced humility that didn't quite hide his smugness. Several people turned when I walked in, surprised I'd shown up given how distant I'd been lately. Dad saw me and his expression flickered with something like annoyance. I was the imperfect child intruding on the celebration of the perfect one. Zara, you made it, he said with forced politeness. We were just discussing Alexei's trajectory. Of course they were. Everything was always about Alexei's trajectory. Alexei's achievements, Alexei's future. I smiled and took a seat in the back, quiet and unobtrusive. Let them have their moment. Let them build it up. The higher the pedestal, the more dramatic the reveal would be. After 30 minutes of toasts and speeches praising my brother, Dad lifted his champagne glass one more time and proudly declared, to Alexei, the only success in this family. The one who listened. The one who chose wisely. The one who made us proud. Laughter and applause filled the room. Glasses clinked. People cheered. My brother nodded graciously, accepting the crown Dad had just placed on his head. The only success. Those words hung in the air like a challenge. Like a gauntlet thrown down, like an invitation I couldn't refuse. That's when I stood up. The room gradually quieted as people noticed me standing in the back. Dad looked irritated at the interruption. Zara, If you'd like to say something, you can congratulate your brother, I interrupted him calmly. Actually, Dad, I have something to show you. Something I've been waiting to share with the family. I walked forward through the crowd, pulling the leather portfolio from my bag. Curious faces turned to watch me. Alexei looked confused. Mom looked concerned. Dad looked annoyed. I handed him the portfolio. What is this? He asked impatiently, probably expecting some amateur design project I wanted approval for. Open it, I said simply. He opened the portfolio and his eyes immediately caught on the letterhead, the logo of one of the world's most recognized luxury brands. His expression changed as he started reading. The smirk disappeared. The condescension evaporated. His face went from annoyed to confused to shocked as he scanned the pages. His hands actually started shaking slightly as he realized what he was reading. A signed contract, employment agreement, compensation details, starting date, the title in bold, lead creative director, global rebranding campaign. This can't be real, Dad stammered, looking up at me with disbelief written across his face. The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching now, sensing something significant was happening. I don't understand. They hired you? For this? His voice carried genuine shock, as if the idea that I could land such a position was incomprehensible. My mother stood up, trying to see the papers over his shoulder. Alexei's smile had frozen on his face, uncertain of what was happening or what it meant. That's when my phone buzzed with perfect timing. The favor I'd asked for was arriving. I walked to the front door and opened it to reveal James Chun, the CEO of the company I'd just signed with. I'd met him during the final interview, and we'd connected well enough that when I'd asked if he'd be willing to make a brief appearance at my family gathering to verify my employment, he'd laughed and said it sounded like fun. I've met plenty of unsupportive families in my career, he told me. I'm happy to help shut them up. James walked in with that confident executive presence, extending his hand to my father. You must be Zara's father. James Chun, CEO. I wanted to personally thank you for raising such a talented daughter. Dad shook his hand mechanically, still processing. Your daughter is going to be leading the most important campaign we've launched in a decade, James continued. Her portfolio was the best we saw out of over 200 applicants. We're lucky to have her. He turned to the room. You should all be very proud. Zara is exceptionally talented. The silence in that room was absolute. You could hear people breathing. You could hear the ice shifting in glasses. You could hear the muted traffic outside. Dead silence as everyone tried to process this reversal. The failed daughter. The disappointment. The one who'd made poor choices and chased impractical dreams. She'd just been validated by a billionaire CEO in front of everyone who dismissed her. Dad stood there holding my contract like it was evidence of a crime he couldn't quite believe had been committed. My mother found her voice first. Zara, why didn't you tell us? When did this happen? Her voice carried hurt alongside confusion. I looked at her honestly. I've been telling you. For years. Every time I showed you a project. Every time I talked about my work. Every time I tried to share what I was building. But no one listened because it wasn't the kind of success you valued. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't traditional. So it didn't count. My voice stayed calm, but the words carried weight. I stopped sharing because I was tired of having my achievements minimized. Tired of being compared to Alexei. Tired of being treated like a cautionary tale. Alexei, to his credit, looked genuinely uncomfortable. Zara, I never meant. I didn't know they were. I know, I interrupted gently. This isn't about you, Alexei. You didn't do anything wrong. You followed your path. I followed mine. But Dad decided only one path counted. I turned back to my father, who was still staring at the contract. You said only successful kids get rewards. You handed Alexei a car key while telling me to achieve something first. I paused. Success looks different on everyone, Dad. You just never bothered to look at mine. James Chun, reading the room perfectly, added his own observation. If I may, I've been in business 40 years. I've seen every kind of success story. The most impressive ones are always the people who succeed despite being told they couldn't, despite having no support, despite choosing the harder path because it was the right path for them. He looked at my father pointedly. Your daughter succeeded in one of the most competitive industries in the world without family connections, without financial backing, without anyone believing in her vision. That's remarkable. That's the kind of determination we value. He shook my hand warmly. Welcome to the team, officially, Zara. We're excited to see what you'll create. He nodded to the room, shook Dad's hand one more time, and made his exit with perfect timing. The room erupted into noise the moment the door closed. Questions, congratulations, confusion, my aunt rushing over to hug me, cousins I barely knew suddenly interested in my career, family friends who'd watched me be dismissed, now acting like they'd always believed in me. The narrative was rewriting itself in real time. But I was focused on my father. He was still standing there, contract in hand, processing. My mother was crying, whether from pride or regret or confusion, I couldn't tell. Alexei had moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink with trembling hands. This moment wasn't about humiliating them. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the truth finally being seen. The truth I'd been living while they'd been creating fictional narratives about my failure. I walked to my father and gently took the contract from his hands. I'm not doing this to embarrass you, I said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear over the noise. I'm doing this so you finally see me. Really see me. Dad's eyes filled with tears. I'd never seen him cry before. Not at graduations or weddings or funerals. Never. But standing there in his living room, surrounded by people who just witnessed his narrative completely unravel, tears spilled down his cheeks. Zara, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I thought I was helping. I thought I was being realistic. His voice broke. I thought you needed tough love to succeed. I thought criticism would motivate you. I didn't see that all I was doing was hurting you. I felt my own eyes burning. I'd wanted this moment of vindication for so long. I'd imagined it 1,000 times. But now that it was here, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad. Sad for all the years we'd wasted with him unable to see me. Sad for the relationship we could have had if he'd been supportive instead of critical. Sad that it took a CEO's validation for him to believe in me when my own achievements should have been enough. I needed you to believe in me, Dad, I said, my voice thick. That's all I ever needed. Not money, not connections, just belief. He pulled me into a hug, something he hadn't done in years. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I should have said that years ago. I should have been saying it all along. We stood there while the party continued around us, having a moment of reconciliation that was long overdue. It didn't fix everything. It didn't erase years of criticism and dismissal. But it was something. It was a start. When we separated, he looked at me with red eyes. Can you forgive me? For not seeing you? For making you feel like you had to prove yourself this dramatically before I'd take you seriously? I thought about his question carefully. I can forgive you, but I need you to understand something. I didn't succeed to prove you wrong. I succeeded because I loved what I was doing despite you telling me it was worthless. That's important. My success isn't about you. It's about me, about my passion, about my vision, about doing work that matters to me even when no one else understood it. He nodded slowly, absorbing that. I understand, and I'll do better. I'll listen better. He paused. Can I make it up to you somehow? I reached into my bag and pulled out a small wrap box I'd prepared. I handed it to him. He looked at me questioningly before unwrapping it. Inside was a car key, luxury brand, custom design. His hands froze. Zara, I can't accept. It's not for you, I said with a small smile. It's from you. Consider it the reward you would have given me if you'd recognized my success when it actually happened. If you'd been watching what I was building instead of dismissing it. I pressed the key into his palm. Keep it, as a reminder to look at all your children's achievements, not just the ones that look like what you expected. He stared at the key, tears flowing again. This must have cost. I can afford it now, I said simply. 6 figures, remember? International campaign. That impractical career path paid off. Mom had joined us by then, her makeup streaked from crying. Zara, sweetheart, I'm so sorry too. I should have defended you. Should have stood up to him when he was being dismissive. Should have celebrated your work even when he didn't. She hugged me tightly. You're amazing. What you've accomplished is incredible. I'm so proud of you. The rest of the party shifted entirely. What started as a celebration of Alexei became a celebration of both of us. People wanted to hear about my work, about the campaign I'd be leading, about how I got into creative direction, about what projects I'd worked on. My brother, after his initial shock wore off, came over with genuine warmth. Congrats, Zara. Seriously, that's incredible. I had no idea you were working at that level. We talked for the first time in years, really talked as peers instead of as the successful child and the struggling one. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel less than, he said quietly. I didn't mean to. I was following the script Dad gave me. I didn't realize there were other ways to succeed until right now. I appreciated his honesty. You didn't make me feel less than, Alexei. You just got the spotlight while I worked in the shadows. That wasn't your fault. You were just being yourself. It's Dad who created the comparison. Alexei nodded thoughtfully. Still, I'm proud of you. And I'm excited to tell people my sister is doing creative work for major international brands. That's way cooler than middle management at a tech company. As the evening wound down, people left with a completely different understanding of the family dynamic. The narrative had been rewritten. I wasn't the failure. I was the success story they've been too blind to see. Dad pulled me aside one more time before I left. The key you gave me, I'm going to keep it on my desk. As a reminder of you, of this moment, of the lesson you taught me tonight about really seeing people. He hesitated. Will you come to dinner next week? Just family, so we can start over. Do this right. I went to that dinner the following week. It was different, awkward in some ways as we all adjusted to the new dynamic, but better. Dad asked questions about my work and actually listened to the answers. Mom showed genuine interest in my projects. Alexei and I discovered we could have conversations as siblings without the weight of comparison crushing everything. It wasn't perfect. Years of patterns don't disappear in one dinner. But it was progress. Real, tangible progress. My job started 2 weeks later. The office was everything I'd imagined. Creative chaos and strategic precision blended perfectly. The team I'd be leading was talented and eager. The campaign we were developing was ambitious and exciting. Every day I walked into that building, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. The work was challenging and demanding and absolutely fulfilling in ways my father's realistic career path never would have been. 3 months into the job, the first phase of our campaign launched. It was everywhere: billboards, magazines, social media, streaming platforms. My name in the credits. My vision realized on a global scale. Dad sent me a photo of a billboard he'd seen downtown with the caption, "Saw your work today." I stood there for 10 minutes just looking at it. I'm so proud. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. That message meant more than the campaign success, more than the industry recognition, more than the 6-figure salary, because it meant he finally saw me. 6 months after that family gathering, I was invited to speak at a design conference. Dad asked if he could attend. I was surprised, but said yes. He sat in the front row while I talked about finding your own definition of success, about persevering when people don't believe in your vision, about the importance of staying true to your creative path even when it's not the practical choice. After my talk, during the Q&A, someone asked how I'd dealt with unsupportive people early in my career. I saw Dad in the audience, saw his expression, and chose my words carefully. I had family members who didn't understand my chosen field, who thought I was making a mistake, who measured success by standards that didn't fit what I was building. It hurt. It made everything harder. But it also made me more determined, more focused, more certain that I needed to prove to myself, not to them, that this was the right path. I paused, and eventually, when the success became undeniable, those relationships healed. People can change their minds when they're willing to really look. After the conference, Dad and I had coffee. That was diplomatic, he said with a small smile. You could have called me out specifically. I shrugged. What would that accomplish? You've apologized. You've changed. You're trying. That's what matters now. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. I've been thinking a lot about why I reacted the way I did to your career choice. I think I was scared. Scared that you'd struggle. Scared that you'd fail. Scared that I'd have to watch you hurt. So I tried to push you toward safety, toward what I understood. I thought I was protecting you. I was actually just projecting my own fears. A year has passed since that Sunday gathering. Since I handed my father a contract that proved everything he doubted. Since James Chin walked into that room and validated what I'd been building in silence. Since the narrative changed permanently. My relationship with my family is different now. More honest, more balanced, more real. Dad brags about my work now with the same enthusiasm he always had for Alexei's. Mom follows my campaigns and sends me photos when she sees my work in the world. Alexei and I have become actual friends, supporting each other's different paths. But the biggest change is internal. I don't need their validation anymore. That moment of vindication was satisfying, yes, but it wasn't what set me free. What set me free was realizing that my success was real whether they saw it or not. That my work mattered whether they understood it or not. That I was enough whether they celebrated me or not. Their recognition became a nice addition to my life rather than the central defining factor. I stopped performing for an audience that hadn't been watching anyway. I learned something profound through this journey. People will measure you by their own definitions of success. They'll tell you that you're failing when you're actually building something they can't see yet. They'll dismiss your achievements because those achievements don't fit their narrow understanding of what matters. And you have a choice. You can internalize their doubts and let them reshape you. Or you can keep building in the shadows until the work speaks for itself. Until the evidence becomes undeniable. Until the truth drowns out the criticism. They rewarded the wrong child for years. Not because Alexei didn't deserve recognition. He did. But because they were so focused on one definition of success that they completely missed another happening right in front of them. Now they know. Now they understand. I wasn't failing while Alexei was succeeding. We were both succeeding on different paths toward different destinations. And both paths were valid. Both journeys were real. Both outcomes were worth celebrating. If you're reading this and you're the one being told to be more realistic, to choose a safer path, to stop chasing impractical dreams, keep building, keep creating, keep pursuing the vision only you can see. Because the people who can't see it now will be the ones standing in shocked silence later when your work finally speaks loud enough that even they can't ignore it. And when that moment comes, you won't need to say much. The contract will speak for itself. The achievement will be its own argument. The success will be the only answer you ever needed to give.